There's a precise moment between inhaling and exhaling when you are neither. A point of suspension, a lapse in time, a crack in the veil. Since I was a child, I used to watch my grandmother sit on the cold porch floor before sunrise. She would just sit there, completely still, breathing in a way that seemed to connect her directly to the invisible. "What are you doing?" I asked her once. "Opening doors," she replied without opening her eyes. I spent years trying to understand that answer. My name is Noah, and this is the Hermes code channel. The ancient cultures knew. In Sanskrit, prana isn't just air. It's the substance everything is made of. There's something hidden within your own body. A dormant energy. A parallel reality you can access at any moment. And the key to this portal lies in the most automatic movement we perform. 25,000 times a day, this energy flows in and out of you, and you don't even notice. Breathing exists in two worlds at once, the visible and the invisible. What happens when you finally pay attention? It's not just air moving in and out. It's a moment of intimacy between you and the universe. The yogis call the energy channels Nadis, 72,000 invisible paths. Underground rivers of life force. Most of us breathe like we're slowly suffocating. Notice how you're breathing right now. Is your breath shallow? Is the air stuck? Interrupted? Your breath holds the memory of your day, your year, your entire life. In Tibetan tradition, it's said that our consciousness rides on the wings of the inner wind. Every breath is an opportunity to wake up. But what would be possible if we could unlock those channels? Did you know that monks in the Himalayas use pranayama to raise their body temperature in extreme cold? Modern science confirms this is entirely possible through conscious control of our involuntary systems. Breathing is the only bodily function that operates in both the voluntary and involuntary nervous systems. That's why it's considered a bridge between two worlds. Have you ever noticed how your breath changes in moments of extreme clarity, in those rare instants when perception is heightened? The philosopher Gaston Bachelard wrote that, to breathe well is to commune with the universal rhythm. He didn't mean that metaphorically, it has a literal meaning. Conscious breathing can awaken Kundalini, the dormant serpent at the base of the spine. When awakened, it rises, bringing more and more expansion of consciousness. But what really happens during these elevated states of awareness? The brain shifts into different wave patterns. Alpha, theta, delta. Frequencies that access dormant parts of the mind. In deep meditation, the breath nearly vanishes, and something begins to emerge from that space. A point of stillness where observer and observed dissolve. But how do we get there without years of practice in isolated caves? How can we access that altered state of consciousness while breathing in a culture that suffocates and keeps its citizens trapped in fear, haste, and distraction? This modern triad that disconnects us from ourselves. Take a deep breath and relax, they all say. As if it were that simple. We live in the age of collective hyperventilation. Chronic superficiality. A society in a perpetual state of fight or flight. The inner space is the last uncolonized territory, and breath is the key to that realm. Eastern traditions are often reduced to commodities in the West, empty packaging of ancient wisdom. We often hear, inhale positivity, exhale negativity. That's the trivialization of the sacred. When I truly committed to studying breath in depth, I realized I had been asleep while awake, breathing like the walking dead for decades. Ancient texts describe 7 levels of breathing, each one corresponding to a different state of consciousness. At the most superficial level, we merely survive. At the deepest, we transcend time itself. The shallow level is considered normal. In fact, normal is the word used to keep everyone on the same frequency. Western science resisted for centuries. Now, through neuroplasticity and epigenetics, It's finally documenting what mystics have always known. For years I practiced, studied, searched for the perfect technique, as if it were a mathematical formula to be cracked. And then, in the silence of an empty room, I realized I had been searching in the wrong place. Breath wasn't the path to something. It was the destination. It wasn't a bridge to cross. It was the river itself. That afternoon, sitting on an ordinary chair on an ordinary day, it all happened. The breath began to truly flow through me. I wasn't trying to control anything. On the contrary, I was immersed in the breath of the universe itself. I had surrendered to that state. 4 seconds in, 16 out. That was the rhythm, or so I estimated. A pace I hadn't consciously chosen. And in that expanded space between each breath, I saw who I was before I existed. Before words. Before names. Before form. There are no words for it. Only silence. The question stopped being how to breathe correctly and became, who is breathing through me? It was no longer me observing the breath, but the creative intelligence of the Absolute observing me. Everything I learned about Kundalini, Prana, Nadis, was true, and yet incomplete. Higher states of consciousness were never far away. They were here and now, inside the simplest inhalation. Our normal breathing is rhythmic amnesia, a forgetting 25,000 times a day. When I returned from that state, I realized my grandmother wasn't just opening doors during those silent mornings. She was dissolving her very sense of self and merging with the Absolute. The technique I searched for so long is too simple for the ego to believe. Just notice the space between each breath, the gap, the pause. That tiny crack is a portal. You don't need remote mountains or years of sacrifice. You only need this moment, this breath. The displaced reality isn't somewhere else. It's right here, hidden in the obvious. When my grandmother passed away, I found her journal. On the last page, a single trembling sentence. Breath is the last thread I cut. What we call I is just a breath sustained for decades. A prolonged musical note. Maybe the real practice isn't breathing differently, but realizing you've never been breathing alone. The universe inhales. You exhale. A continuous dance since your very first cry. So now, in this very moment, as these words reach you, just allow. One full breath. No force. No technique. And in that space between inhale and exhale, remember, the door was never locked. My name is Noah, and this was my offering to you for today. Until our next video.